Because I remember one time they were like, oh, your laptop battery was scanned as an explosive, and I was like, really? Really, really, really? Hey friends, welcome to my channel. I feel like I should create a jingle just for this short part where I just move my body a bit. I'm not gonna call it dance, I'm gonna call it move my body a bit. Anyway, how have you guys been? How has your week been? How has your day started? How is your day ending if you're watching this at night or in the evening? I am well, I am rejuvenated, I am positive, I am happy, I am so excited because we are moving towards my favorite season of the year, Christmas. Christmas is just my favorite. So I'm just counting down days. I'm like, excited. Let's talk about color. If you don't know, I am from Kenya and I moved here and I have been living abroad for a while. I remember when I told one of my cousins that I was moving abroad, they were like, and I was like, oh, you can come live with me, and they were like, nope, I don't want to live in a racist place. And I was like, okay, cool. But one thing I have always been confident and known is I've always been confident in my skin. I've always loved being a black person, a dark-skinned person, and it's never crossed my mind. You know the way sometimes people wish, oh, I wish I was born white, I wish I was born in a different place, or I wish I was born different. It's never crossed my mind about me being born a different color from what I am or who I am. And I remember when I was back in Kenya, I never thought of people who have a different skin color having more advantage compared to me. And then I had these stories about racism even in Kenya, and I was like, what? And then there was the whole Black Lives Matter thing, and there was all this talk about it, and I was just like, we are in a totally different century. Why are we acting like we are still in the 16th or 15th century? Like, why? Like, why are these things going on? And then I moved here, and I remember one of the times I posted on my Instagram, and I was like, ask me any question, and people are like, do you experience racism? And I was like, nope, I don't. And a few of my friends who live here were actually shocked. They're like, oh, you've never? And I was like, well, I don't think I have. And I think for me it's just because I have very tough skin, so by the time you're actually getting to me to a point where I'm thinking you're actually racist, you actually are. But people have talked about how obviously being a different color from what majority of people who live here are makes them or puts them in certain places. Sometimes it's an advantage, sometimes it's a disadvantage, and yeah, I thought, let's talk about it. Let's finally talk about this thing that people do not like talking about, people do not like addressing it, but let's talk about it. So when I moved here, I remember getting a job, and I was telling my friend, the friend I was living with when I moved here, and I was telling them I'm literally the only black person, and she was like, yep, get used to it because you are going to be the black person in many rooms. And I was like, yep, I'm here for it, I am here to show. And I remember even at uni, like, I have been, obviously there's classes where I've literally been the only one who has this color, and it's never like made me feel a certain way. But then obviously not everyone is like me, and I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that people sometimes may be threatened. I acknowledge that different people have different perspectives and different experiences. So even as you watch this video, this is my own experience. This is what I have gone through. So do not take it as the truth and nothing but the truth, but this is me and my experience. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the good, the bad, and sometimes the ugly of living abroad as a person of color. Now, one of the good things I've found about living abroad is the cultural immersion. There's so many cultures, there's so many people who you can share your experience with, you can share your culture with, you can learn from their culture, and it's just a mix of different cultures, which makes it so interesting, makes it so fun. Like today you could be celebrating the Chinese New Year, tomorrow you're celebrating something totally different, the next day another event, and you're just like, wow, I'm learning about different cultures, I'm learning about different foods and all of that, which I've actually come to appreciate so much from my time living abroad. Another one is the way people communicate. Now for me, I moved obviously to Australia, which is an English speaking country, let me put it that way. So it's just been about like learning the slang, and sometimes I'm fascinated. Like for example, what I thought were thongs, the only thing I thought were thongs, coming here there's a whole different meaning to the word, and I was like, oh. So when I remember someone saying, oh, I have thongs, and I'm like, oh, okay. Obviously I didn't want to show that I do not know what they are, but then when I googled, literally they're just slippers, like they're flip-flops. What I know as slippers or flip-flops are called thongs here, and I was like, the thong I knew it's not that. Another thing I've found really good is diverse friendship. This is obviously tied to the first point of cultural immersion, because you're talking to people, you're making friends with people from everywhere, you're making friends not just with people from where you're coming from, but people from everywhere, the US, the Asia, whatever, you're making friends with them, which is actually a good thing, because that way you share different experiences. You may be going through the same thing. If you're studying, if you're working, you may be going through the same thing, and you share experiences, and it just makes everything wonderful for everyone. Now, one of the things I have never really thought of, sometimes I do, I'm not gonna lie, but I have never like given it so much thought, is how, for example, I'm the only black person, or I'm the minority in probably the places I work at, in school, in uni, where I live, and all that stuff. But I remember a few months ago when I was offered this permanent role, and I was like, yeah, I know I'm doing a good job, but then a part of me was like, did they just offer it to me because I am the minority? Because I remember one person who really wanted to get the role but ended up not getting it. So I was like, why me? You know, the times you question yourself, sometimes you're like, why me? I don't have the skills. Or for me, it was like, is it because of my color? But obviously I even talked with my mom about it jokingly, but then I was like, you know what, I'm deserving of this, and I am here because I am meant to be here. Like I had to talk to myself through that. And sometimes it can get to a place you're like, I don't know, am I really worth it? And it can get to you, I'm not gonna lie. One of the things my friends have talked about, who are living in different places, not just where I am, is the part where sometimes they feel discriminated. And I was discussing this with another friend of mine, about sometimes where you're going through the airport check-in whatever system, and then you'll see like your bag pass, or other people's bags pass through very well, very with no difficulties. And then it comes to yours and it goes through this other side and they have to check it. And sometimes I'm like, is it because of this color of my skin that they have to open my bag, remove everything, and then when they return everything, they never return it the way you packed, which sucks. But I'm just like, is it because I look a certain way? Because I remember one time they were like, oh, your laptop battery was scanned as an explosive, and I was like, really? Really? It wasn't an Apple, it wasn't a MacBook, but it was a Lenovo laptop. So I was just like, so yeah, so they scanned my bag, they scanned my shoes, and I was just like, wow. Like, how many times do people have to go through this? People who look like me, people who are from other places other than this place, have to go through this all the time. Because my friend was talking about how they scanned her brother's diaper, literally removed their brother's diaper just because of that. And I was like, it's 2023. Why are we still doing this? That's one thing I do not like, to be honest. But anyway, I have to deal with it. It's a system, it's not me, and I just have to talk myself through it all and be like, nope, it's not my problem. Let them do what they want. I'm usually very cooperative, but at the back of my mind, I'm like, why? Sometimes there's also cultural misunderstandings because we do not come from the same culture, obviously. So when you're interacting with people from a different culture, there's certain words that may trigger them. There's certain behaviors that may trigger them in a certain way. And sometimes it's very hard to be aware of this when you don't know it. I remember interacting with someone and then after a while they got so defensive. I was like, hold up, let me explain where I was coming from. But yeah, it was a very weird interaction. I have found myself talking to myself in Kiswahili because there's no one else to talk to in Swahili other than myself. Which sometimes makes it isolating, makes me homesick. I'm just like, oh my god. So every time I talk to my sister on the phone, I do not speak to her in English. We talk in Swahili because I'm like, hey, who am I going to speak to in this language? Even though like English was my first language, is my first language, I'm like, nope, let's switch. So with all that being said, how do you cope with this? To be honest, you have to do a lot of talking to yourself and empowering yourself sometimes that you are worth it and you are capable and you are in the right place at the right time and that you're doing the best for yourself. That, to be honest, is all I can tell you when it comes to coping with it, because it can be hard. But then as long as you're doing the right thing, as long as you are exactly where you're supposed to be, then everything else will just fall into place. What you have no control over, really, you just don't, and you just have to go with the system, which sucks. But then what you have control over is all you can focus on. And I was actually thinking about how there are so many songs written about Black beauty, African beauty, and I think it's because we need so much empowering. We need to be reminded so many times of who we are and what we bring to the table, because we bring a lot. And yeah, whatever you're going through, whatever you're scared of, if you're planning to move abroad and you're like, I'm not ready to live with all this, let me tell you, you can, you will, and you just constantly have to remind yourself why you're here, and everything else will fall into place. So I hope this helps. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you haven't, please subscribe, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.